Hey friends, today I'm going to share with you the costs on both sides of downsizing or staying in your home and things you should be considering. So let's first set the stage with our couple who has raised kids and purchased a 4,200 square foot house back in the 2000s decade. They paid $150 a foot for this house, or $630,000. Now, they've raised kids in the house and the kids have graduated from college and begun adult lives of their own. And our couple here is looking around the house and thinking, gosh, some things are starting to need some work. I wonder if this is the time we should consider downsizing. Now, we've all known others that have taken this step and gotten some positive feedback, but the question for our couple is this the right thing? So let's look at the housing market, which has been pretty good. Their realtor friend shares that they could sell their house for $375 a foot, which is a value of $1.575 million. That's a gain of almost $950,000. Certainly they could use the money to find exactly what they want. But there are some things to take into account here as they consider what they'll do. We know that their cost basis in the home is $630,000. And we know that under current tax law, the first $500,000 in gain on their primary residence is not taxable. But the taxable amount of their gain would be about $445,000. And at 15% capital gains, that's a cap gains tax of $66,750. Additionally, they'll most likely have realtor expenses in the sale, so let's just assume that is 6%. This amounts to $94,500. So once we do the math on our sale, our empty nester couple will net just a little over $1.4 million on the sale of their home. This is a pretty decent amount to go shopping for a smaller home, but if our couple wants to continue to live in a desirable area, chances are that the per foot price of a smaller home is going to be more than what they sold their home for. Let's assume as they begin looking for homes that they were considering a 2,500 foot home at first, but then they decided they needed just one more bedroom. They wanted to be able to have space for 2 kids to come home or to have spare bedrooms that are also doubled as a home office or a yoga space. So their needs went up to 2,800 square feet of space. So as our couple begins to look for homes in the area that they wanted to live in that are 2,800 feet, they found their square foot price was roughly $430 per foot. This is a cost of $1.2 million just to get in the home. Now, while they made more than it cost to get into their new home, they did make some space sacrifices. They now have 66% of the space they had in their old home, and to get that smaller space, it cost them 85% of what they sold the previous home for. Our first big takeaway is it will cost more than you think for the downsized house. So once they're in the new home, what will they likely need to do? Hang some drapes. They're going to begin the process of decorating. Not going all out, mind you, but doing some things to update their previous interiors. Again, maybe some new drapes, maybe a new master bed, maybe a couch that better fits in the great room. This probably costs them $20,000 to $25,000. Now, they're still ahead from a profit standpoint, but the difference is dwindling. So our second takeaway is, once you're in that downsized home, there will be some things you have to spend on to make it just like you want it. At this point, hopefully we're considering the pros and cons of not only downsizing, but also the pros and cons of keeping our larger house. What would that look like? As we enjoy our retirement years, chances are we're traveling and we're concerned about the upkeep of the home. Well, what are the primary things that need upkeep? Most likely it's the yard and house cleaning. So if we assume $400 a month for the yard and $300 a month for house cleaning, that puts us $700 a month for upkeep in the original house. That's $8,400 a year, so not a small number. But what's the maintenance on our new downsized home? We more than likely still have a yard, which may cause us to need to hire our yard service, or we may have a homeowners association cost. Let's assume $300 monthly for this. And since we have a smaller home now, let's also assume $250 a month for house cleaning. That's $550 a month or $6,600 a year, a difference of $1,800. So our third takeaway is, There will still be costs to maintain the smaller house, just like there are costs to maintain the larger house. And while it is more to maintain the larger house, it isn't materially more. This is, of course, a judgment call. Let's now consider real estate appreciation over time. As we know, real estate is commonly considered to appreciate at roughly 3% annually. What this means then is that our new home ought to appreciate, but our larger home ought to continue to appreciate as well. If our couple's existing home is worth $375 a foot now, that means this home ought to appreciate roughly $47,000 next year. But here's the thing, this is a compounding number. So what this means is if we run the existing home out 15 years into the future, we would by and large have property appreciation of roughly $879,000. Now let's compare the same to our couple's downsized home. At $430 a foot for 2,800 square feet, the rough appreciation annually for this home in the first year would be $36,000. If we run this number out for 15 years, that would put cumulative appreciation at roughly $672,000. This is a difference for the two homes of $207,000 in appreciation. In other words, all things equal, you would be $207,000 ahead in value by staying in the larger house. Now, we mentioned that it would cost more to maintain the larger home, but using our assumptions of $1,800 annual cost difference for the yard and house cleaning, the 15-year cumulative compounded extra cost for maintaining the larger home amounts to $34,000. So y'all, the takeaway is giving consideration to hanging on to the larger home makes sense. Also worth noting, it may be you hold on to your larger home for the rest of your lives. If you go to glory one day and your kids inherit your home, under current tax law, they'll receive a step up in basis on the home, meaning they will not pay the capital gains tax you would pay if you sold your home today or into the future, but before you passed away. It's important that all these thoughts blend into a life well lived, and tax space costs certainly play into living well also. So in conclusion, there are certainly going to be cases where trade-offs are needed and it's not so black and white. But going into this process, prioritizing what makes the most sense in the long term will be important. Only you are going to be able to decide what makes the most sense, but as you approach your retirement years, we're going to want to have where and how you live carefully built into your plan. Because how you live and your plan for the future should represent freedom. Now, if you're watching this and this is resonating and you're saying, Chris, I think that I'd like some help with this, please reach out to us for a no obligation intro consultation. We'd love to hear from you.